Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is Dwars, Vlaanderen 2025. Today's race, we got all kinds of questions on the table, but the main one has to be Wout van Aert. What kind of form can he bring into Tour of Flanders? I told you guys he had 9 days to get ready for Tour of Flanders, and we would see a much better Wout van Aert at Tour of Flanders. So this is a little stepping stone of performance, a way to look at Wout van Aert before Tour of Flanders starts proper. So let's get into today's race, because at 185 kilometers, just a hair under, I'll call it 115 miles in length, and we have 17 cobblestones and bergs to deal with throughout this 115-mile race. So it's going to be an exciting race, because when the cameras come on, it's windy out there, guys. We got an 8-rider group up front, and they're holding about a 50-second gap on the peloton. And when we look at the peloton, Lidl-Trek and Albacete de Koenig are on the front, but it's nervous. It's been aggressive because the wind has been blowing left and right. We don't have to get too much further into the race before we're into 92 kilometers to go. And we see the big guy, Wout van Aert, throwing in attacks. Okay, I told you guys on Beyond the Coverage, this is not the way to do it. He did have a teammate in front of him setting some pace, but now Wout van Aert is drilling it up the climb, and Jorgensen's on his wheel. I don't know if I want Wout van Aert drilling it at 92 kilometers to go. But when he gets off the front and we see Jorgensen get on the front with 90 kilometers to go, I definitely told you guys that I did not want to see Jorgensen on the front. I wanted to see Jorgensen covering attacks. But right now he's on the front trying to make attacks. And then we see Mads Pedersen from Lidl-Trek doing the same thing. We go into 88 kilometers to go, and that group of 8 up front blowing up to pieces. We see Mikkel Björk from UAE Team Emirates, and Rasmus up there, Rasmus Pedersen from AG2R. He's up there. The 2 guys left as everyone else is blowing up back there from the pace. We go into 85 kilometers to go, just 3 kilometers later, and we look at the peloton and we see attack as it's Josh Tarling throwing in attack with Nielsen Powless from EF Education, the American rider. He's won some races throughout his career, but this is a semi-classic right here. But he did win Classic of San Sebastian a few years back, but he won it from a kind of a breakaway style. Not exactly, but kind of. Now, we start looking further back as we see the 3rd rider. That's Fabio from Albacete de Koenig there. So we got 3 riders chasing the 2 riders up front. Now, we come into 77 kilometers to go. As those 2 groups are still chasing each other, we see Visma-Lease bike come to the front. Then we see a 4th Visma rider come up. Then we see a 5th rider come up from Visma-Lease bike. And then we see a 6th rider come up from Visma-Lease bike right now, as they're all on the right side of the road. Now they start drilling it. With Visma-Lease bike, 6 riders up front, you know you want to be in good position at this moment, because this is a good way to do it, or at least the better way than tacking solo is to have your teammates on the front. I don't know if I'm a fan at 77 kilometers out from the finish to start throwing down, but if you're going to do it, narrow, twisty roads with crosswinds and a climb coming up soon, this is not a bad time to do it. Now, we go back up front, and we start seeing the 2 groups there are starting to come closer together, and we get into about 71 kilometers to go as the 3 riders, Josh Tarling back there, rounding up the 2 riders in front. That'll make 5 riders in the breakaway, and they're holding about a 40-second gap on the peloton. But as they're getting ready to start the next climb, Berg ten Oath, as they're going up, we got to back the film up just a hair to look at the peloton, because Dylan Van Barley has opened up the gap. As Dylan Van Barley has opened up the gap, Visma-Lease bike got 4 riders on the front, and that's a Feeney leading the power train right now as he's blowing up the road. Take a look at Lidl-Trek. They're in trouble. Mads Pedersen and Stuyvens are about 30th position back, and it's in the crosswind as Stuyvens looking over to try to figure out where Mads Pedersen is. I could tell you, you're in trouble right now. We go up to the start of the climb, Berg ten Oath, and we see the breakaway of 5 riders hit it. As they're hitting the climb, now you know why Mads Pedersen is in trouble, because look behind the break and see that twisty descent. That means Affini is throwing everything into his big chain ring right now and throwing down hard, and they still have that gap that Dylan Van Barley opened up with just a day before that. As Dylan Van Barley's gap is now coming into fruition right now, we see 4 Visma riders coming in to start Berg ten Oath, and it's Affini on the front. As Affini pulls off hard left, it's time for Wout van Aert to go to work. As Wout van Aert, Jorgensen, and Thies Benoot go to work up Berg ten Oath, we see up front that is Josh Tarling getting dropped out of this group of 5, making 4 up front. Now, as there's 4 up front, Thijs Benoot flying by with Jorgensen and Wout van Aert flying by Josh Starling. Josh Starling's getting out of the saddle trying to jump onto the B train there, but he's got no legs left as the three riders from Visma-Lease bike, the Yellow Bees, they're going up the road. We look further back, the peloton's blowing up all over the place, and we go up front and we see that the three riders from Visma-Lease bike have now closed the gap up to the 4 riders. That gives us 7 riders in the front group right now. We look behind to see what's happening as they're coming over the summit. You see the field coming across in the back of the picture there. Well, that's Stefan Kuhn. He's throwing everything into his tack trying to close up the gap, but he can't quite bring up the peloton to the back end of the group of favorites up front, as we're talking about a 15-second gap right now of 7 riders to the peloton behind. As Stefan Kuhn fell, Mads Pedersen has found his way up to the front, and now he's throwing in his own attack. I don't know if I like this attack. If you can't make it across, you're blowing up the peloton and all of your teammates back there, but Mads Pedersen's throwing everything into it. We go up and look at the 7. Now let's see what's happening as Wout van Aert and Jorgensen are pulling on the front. Thijs Benoot's having all kinds of problems. This is the knuckleheadism here from Thijs Benoot. This is not the time or place to start having riders that have been in the break like Mikkel Bjerg and Rasmussen throughout the time the cameras have been on proper. It is not the time to start giving these guys a hard time with Nielsen Palace back there who won't work. If you don't work with 3 Visma-Lease bike riders, you're definitely not a knucklehead at this moment, but Thijs Benoot keeps causing problems, so the time gap is holding at about 15 seconds to the peloton back there because Thijs Benoot won't just go up and do his job. Wout van Aert's pulling at the front. Jorgensen's doing his job at the front. Nielsen Palace has to close some gaps that Thijs Benoot has opened up not once, not twice, 3, 4, 5 times possibly, causing drama up in this group of 7 and trying to make guys work who really have no reason to work when you got 3 Visma-Lease bike riders at the front, and one's called Wout van Aert, first page rider, 6th on my first page. And of course, Jorgensen, winner of Paris-Nice, and who has been riding fabulous at the Classics throughout the 25 season. Not always intelligently, but fabulously with his legs. With this group still only holding about a 15-second gap, we go back and start looking at Intermarché on the front. They got 2 riders riding on the front because they got Biniam Girmay, the sprinter, the Eritrean. He's won some races in the Classics and he's won some Tour de France stages this last season. So the Eritrean's trying to win here at Dwars, Vlaanderen. That's why he's got his 2 teammates on the front. Now the problem is, where's the rest of the help? Where's the help? Mads Pedersen, you are a favorite here, a 3-star favorite to win Dwars, Vlaanderen, and you are not putting Stuyvens on the front. We look at this group, and we'll call it about 40, 50 riders with multiple different teams up here. And sure, I saw Ineos riding a little bit. I saw Bora Hansgrohe attacking. I saw Mads Pedersen attacking. I saw Stuyvens doing some stuff, but never pulling on the front with Intermarché. These guys are knuckleheads. They all need to be on the front right now because you got 3 Visma-Lease bike riders up there pulling, and you got Nielsen Palace coming through occasionally. Now I was texting my boy Garrett and saying that Nielsen Palace could possibly work through. You guys are like, what? Are you crazy? I literally said, EF Education just do not have the favorites back there, and if you can guarantee yourself a high position right here with a zero chance of winning. You're not going to beat Wout van Aert. No way, not in the sprint. It's not possible, but you can guarantee a good placing, and maybe the big guy can slip his chain out of the last corner, and Nielsen Palace has got a little bit of speed. What we saw from his victory when we go back a couple years and look at Classic of San Sebastian that he won in the sprint, you know he's got more speed than Thijs Benoot and Jorgensen, so maybe the big guy slips the chain out of the last corner and you can win that way, but that's the only chance Nielsen Palace has, but he can podium for sure. So I don't mind Nielsen Palace coming through, taking soft pedals. Now, Alpecin de Koenigs, Fabio up here, no reason for him to do any work up here because, of course, he's got Jasper Philipsen back there, assuming that the sprinter's got some good legs. Now, we start going up into about 55 kilometers to go, and it's the Knoteberg up there. And as this climb starts, I backed the film up just a hair before this, and we see the gap was getting down to around 10 seconds, even below. So you know it's possible to bring it back. Now we look at the riders up front as we see Visma-Lease bike drilling it up this climb. We start seeing some of the breakaway guys there get dropped out the back as Rasmus gets dropped, Bjerg gets dropped, and then we see Fabio get dropped. That means we got 4 guys. We go down and look at the peloton. This is another tactical mistake right here from Lidl Trek as they're both on the front. Mads Pedersen and Stuyvens are on the front before this climb starts proper. You want to beat at the front for sure, but at this moment you want Stuyvens on the front. You want him drilling it as hard as he possibly can. Instead, to me, what I can tell from the camera anyways, looks like Liddell Trek, Mads Pedersen, Stuyvens just fought for position, but neither one wants to sell out for the other at this moment, even though the gap's at about 10, 12, 14 seconds at this moment, and totally doable if the tactics have been right. But they've been wrong for the peloton throughout this whole race so far. Now we see Ineos are on the front chasing like crazy. Then we see Mads Pedersen throw an attack as he's trying to close the gap, but he can't close it. Mads, what are you thinking? You have Stuyvens in this group. Just put him on the front and drill it. As we see Mads Pedersen going full gas, he's blowing it up back there. He's got Beniam Girmay on his wheel. He's got two Bora Hansgrohe riders on his wheel, and he's got Stuyvens on his wheel. But we look further back, it's AG2R closing the gap to put about 8, 9 riders here, and then it's FDJ, Stefan Kuhn closing up to bring this peloton back together. And instead of Stuyvens going to the front, what does he do? Well, it all sits up and it goes curb to curb. You know that group up front just gaining some more time as it went out to 20, 22 seconds. Now we see Mads throwing an attack, followed that by Stuyvens. This is the wrong way to do it because we have the Oton coming up in only a K or two. Stuyvens just needed to get on the front and drill it for Mads Pedersen. Instead, they're trying to attack. It's attack after stop, then attack, and then stop again. So the group of now 4 riders up front with Nielsen Palace working through, they're working well together, and they're starting to gain some time as it's going out to 24, 25 seconds. Then it starts to blow up, and now we know that the 4 riders got a shot here at winning Dwars, Vlaanderen, because when I show you the next attack coming from back there, that's Mikkel Bjerg throwing that attack, and he already got dropped out of this front group, so you know it's going too slow back there to catch the 4 up front. Now these 4 start going into about 25 kilometers to go. Once they get in there, we're going to see that as Nielsen Palace doing something with his hand there, he's got it off the bar as we see Thies Benoot look back. Once Thies Benoot looks back, there's a gap in front of Nielsen Palace and Thies Benoot, and Palace just still does something with his hand. I don't know what he's doing. It's in front of his body, so you can't see it from the back of the picture. But the gap is growing to Jorgensen and Wout van Aert. At this point in time, if you've got the kind of form that we've seen of Wout van Aert when he's at 100%, you know the big guy would punch it. But instead, Nielsen Palace punches it with Thies Benoot on his wheel and closes up the gap. Now, guys, he closes up the gap into the next climb. That is a hard task right there, to close up to Jorgensen and Wout van Aert before the next climb of cobblestone, and then cover and stay on the wheel as they're going up the right side gutter. Well, he does a fabulous job. They go over the top, and the gap is now getting out to about 40 seconds. We go back and look at the peloton. There's attack after attack all over the place, but nothing can hold off the pace of the peloton as they keep bringing everything back together, but then they shut it down again, so the gap up to the 4 leaders is still increasing. It'll go up to about 50 seconds, and then we come under 20 kilometers to go when we see Nielsen Palace look over at Wout van Aert, and they have a bit of a discussion. Now I was texting with my home skill, and he was saying, do you think Nielsen Palace could get second? I was like, he could for sure get second and just make some kind of a deal and say, hey, I want second. I worked with you guys get the win, I get second. But then I text my home skillet back and I go, there's no difference to me between second, third, or fourth, so you might as well go for the win. Well, I don't know what Nielsen Palace choose to do, but right now all 4 are still working well together. We go back and look at the peloton back there. We see it's attack with Mads Pedersen and 5 other riders with under 18 kilometers to go, and the gap's still up at about 40 seconds. These 6 are going trying to bridge up to 40 seconds, but they still can't close the gap on the 4 leaders in front. The peloton behind, forget about it. They're dropping time now. So we go up and look at the 4 riders up front. When we come into 10 kilometers to go, the gap is at 43 seconds. They're still working well together. We come into 7 kilometers to go, 7.5. We see Nielsen Palace is at the front. We come into 5.7 kilometers to go. Nielsen Palace is still pulling up front with the 3 Visma-Lease bike riders. We come into just about 2.5, 2.7 kilometers to go. This is the last pull from Nielsen Palace from EF Education, and then Wout van Aert rotates up and off, and this is the last time the big guy pulls too. Now, next up, we're going to see Jorgensen and Thies Benoot pulling the whole time all the way into 1.2 kilometer to go. He moves up into second, and right away, Nielsen Palace does the same thing up to third. Jorgensen's back and forth, and then Jorgensen realizes that this isn't helping the big guy, Wout van Aert. They have clearly decided to make this a four-way sprint and try to win with Wout van Aert. So Jorgensen goes back up to the front with under a K to go. We'll call it about 900 meters. He starts pulling all the way into the last 300 meters with the right turn. Once he pulls off, we'll see Thijs Benoot take over the front. Thijs Benoot hits out hard after the final right turn started proper. And once Thijs Benoot accelerates, he takes it into 200 meters to go. Wout van Aert, the big guy from Visma-Lease bike, wants to wrap this up and come back to the winning podium position here. As he starts his acceleration at 200 meters to go, he jumps on the left side, going between the fence and between Thijs Benoot. We look further back. Nielsen Palace jumped with a hard attack, and now he's coming around the right side there of Thijs Benoot. 150 meters to go. Wout van Aert's got about a half a bike length lead. We come into 100 meters to go. They're tied just about, maybe a tire width there to Wout van Aert. 75 meters to go. Nielsen Palace has got the lead here at Dwars, Vlaanderen over Wout van Aert. It's incredible. 50 meters to go. Wout van Aert's throwing everything that he's got left in the legs as he's sitting down with his head powering as hard as he can. 25 meters to go. Wout van Aert stops pedaling. It's over. The big guy drops his head. As he drops his head, Nielsen Palace has got an expression, a roar on the bars as he's sprinting to the line. He sits up, and as he sits up and starts to celebrate, Thijs Benoot's head drops down, his hand goes to his helmet. They know they lost miserably here at Dwars, Vlaanderen. As we see Nielsen Palace start to celebrate when he crosses the line. Then you see the head go down on Matteo Jorgensen back there from Visma-Lease bike, the third rider here. As we look up at Nielsen Palace celebrating a victory here, roaring across the line at Dwars, Vlaanderen. A victory that can only be explained as spectacular and spectacular knuckleheadism. Now, when we start looking at the second place, Wout van Aert, of course, got second. Third goes there to Thijs Benoot. Fourth is going to go to Matteo Jorgensen. And fifth, sprinting back there, that group of six, that's going to be Mads Pedersen, who comes across the line fifth on today's Dwars, Vlaanderen. Now, when you start looking at the interviews were spectacular. Palace had a spectacular interview. He said he never expected in a million years to be able to beat Wout van Aert. Who did? Nobody expected this at all. I thought he'd get second at best. Who would have thought that Nielsen Palace can beat Wout van Aert here at Dwars, Vlaanderen? But he says he was between a rock and a hard place, and sometimes with his director sportif, they were on and off again whether or not if he was going to work. I thought it was a good call to work for Nielsen Palace to ride with these guys, soft pedal, keep the gap close to the group behind because he still had a sprinter back there in Vandenberg if they did get caught. But you would never want that gap to go out to 2 minutes or something because then you could clearly start getting attacked and that could cause problems. But if you kept it tight, if you rotate through softly, if you have very good legs, the best legs you've ever had in your career, and Nielsen Palace, you got the best legs you have ever had in your career. There's no doubt about it. But if you have those kind of legs and you can take it into the sprint, maybe you got a chance of getting second because you got no chance of winning, but you won somehow. It was spectacular. We look at the other interviews from Wout van Aert. He takes all of the blame. Guys, he says the critics have been hard on him up in Belgium, so he wanted to deliver the win. He said he was selfish today. He asked his other two breakaway companions, Jorgensen and Thijs Benoot, that they would just lead him out and he'd be able to win the race. And I got to believe, it's not a bad plan. But Wout van Aert has to know how he's feeling. If he's feeling good, I have no problems with this tactic. Zero if Wout van Aert is feeling good. You have to know how you're feeling. But when you look, when their started the attack was 70 kilometers to go, and the gap is always being held at 15 and 20 seconds by two riders from Intermarché, by the occasional Ineos rider back there pulling, by the occasional attacks from Mads Pedersen and Stuyvens, and they're only holding a 15, 20-second gap. Mads Pedersen back there doing most of the attacking. Well, when you look at Wout van Aert, you know his form's not 100%. Otherwise, that group would be gone. It's so much not 100% that when my home skill said, well, Palace must be riding good right here if he's in this front group. And I said, or Wout van Aert is riding bad, because if Wout van Aert was riding good, Palace would be dropped at this moment in the race when we're talking about 20 kilometers to go. But instead, Palace won today's race because Wout van Aert doesn't understand how his legs are feeling. Now, if you're feeling bad, the only tactic you play for sure, 100% if you're Visma-Lease bike, once you get under 10 kilometers to go, Jorgensen attacks, Thijs Benoot attacks, just like we saw last year when Jorgensen won, and then Wout van Aert attacks if those guys get brought back. You let Palace have to ride the front, covering all the attacks from the three riders. Palace wears out. Wout van Aert wins the sprint if Palace can keep it all together. The other two riders win the race if they can get away from Nielsen Palace. But of course, the pressure that Wout van Aert feels is unlike anyone else feels. When I've gone into big races before, you can't understand if you're sitting at home how much press and how much pressure is put on your shoulder to win bike races that you're normally used to winning. Wout van Aert took a lot of time off of bike racing to come here and get ready at Gent-Wevelgem and Dwars, Vlaanderen so that he could be ready to win Tour of Flanders. Well, they lost big time today in a spectacular moment for Nielsen Palace. His greatest victory to date, 100%, no doubt about it. Congratulations, Nielsen Palace. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next edition of the Butterfly Effect real soon.